WTJU. My name's Peter, and back in 2019, when WTJU moved from its last location over here to Ivy Road, we kicked off our live music sessions with the Jacob Jolliff Band, and here it is 5 years later. They're back because they've got a big concert this evening. That is the 12th of June here in Charlottesville at Potter's Craft Cider, a show that starts at 7 o'clock, and they were nice enough to come in a little early and play for us all. Before we chat, how about you all kick off with a couple? Live here at the stage of WTJU, the sounds of the Jacob Jolliff Band. Jacob on mandolin, George Jackson on fiddle, Ross Martin on guitar, and Miles Sonic are back there on the big upright. Together they are the Jacob Jolliff Band. They're playing this evening. That would be the 12th of June at Potter's Craft Cider for a Front Porch concert. And goodness, they're going to be all over the place. They're also going to be I'm looking here at the Evening Muse in Charlotte tomorrow. They're going to be in Brevard, North Carolina Friday, Franklin, North Carolina Saturday, and Sunday they're going to be at Floyd Country Store.
That's right.
So all over the place. In support of your latest album, Mandolin Mysteries, your second instrumental album. First of all, welcome back to WTJU.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks for having us.
Thrilled to get you back here, Jacob. I was just thinking about the different lineups I've seen. I mentioned 5 years ago we had you in here. It was you and Miles and Alex Hargraves and Mike Robinson. 2 years ago you were at Red Wing with Stash Weisslouch and John Mylander. And you get serious about somebody when you take them down under to perform in Australia and then record an album with them. So
That's right.
tell me about this lineup you got with you.
Yeah, well, I've been lucky to have a lot of really great players play with my group, but I guess the nature of the level of the people that I get to play is they're all busy and in demand because they're so great. So, they're not always available. So there's been periods with the group where I've had like subs for various musicians, which is a lot of work because it's difficult material. But I feel lucky that in the last year and a half, this lineup's kind of fallen into place with, some amazing players, with George and Ross and Miles. But they're, also, the gig seems to work pretty well for what they want to do, and they've made themselves available for it, which I don't take for granted. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't bring in somebody that's not up to the task of your music. And that's what I want to talk about, first of all, is that first album, Instrumentals, came out about 5 years ago, and this latest one. What's the biggest difference between those two? The complexity?
Well, in some ways, I think in some ways the stuff on the first record was just as complex. I think, I don't know, it's just different when you're in your mid-30s versus 20s. I've made a lot of records since then, too, and played a ton of shows, but hopefully a little less to prove. That would be the ideal.
Yeah.
I hate to be going in the other direction.
So, well, you hadn't left Yonder too much far before when you recorded that album, or had you the first one? Or
Say that again.
Had you already recorded the first instrumentals when you were still with Yonder
Yeah,
Mountain? Or, okay.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I put it out when I was in that group. Yeah. I stopped playing with them at the end of 2019.
Right.
Kind of right before the pandemic, and then sort of since after the pandemic, touring has been a lot of stuff with my group.
So I'm just to go back. I of course both albums were complex, but I'm curious when you're writing, what do you find yourself doing differently in terms of, or is it still the same process? For you?
It's a little different. I mess around with melodies and chords on the piano a lot. For the new record, there was a lot of stuff I did that way, and just to kind of get out of some of the traps I might fall into on the mandolin. Also, like when you are have more proficiency on an instrument, you can kind of take maybe a melodic or harmonic thing that isn't actually that compelling, and you can make it sound good because you know how to play. But if you're working on an instrument that you don't play, you kind of have to be more engaged by the melodic material in and of itself, because you're not dressing it up and making it sound good necessarily, So yeah, a lot of stuff I wrote on the messed around with on the piano and then brought it to the mandolin. No, I think the process other than that was pretty similar. I send the guys like the tunes, not so much charts, but mostly like voice memos, and kind of tell them what lines to learn, and then we put it together, all four of us, in the room. So, but very few charts though. It's kind of we tend to arrange stuff without charts very much. Yeah.
Well, I was chatting with Daryl Anger about going back and listening to the early stuff, the DGQ, and he said, "Well, don't really do that." He said, "Once a live thing's over, I just move on." What's your thought on that? Do you ever go
like
back
in regard to the live shows?
Yeah.
Oh, I listen back all the time. I record all of them just on my phone, and it's not the best quality of recording, but it's enough to get a feel for. A lot of times I tend to listen back when I have a really good show or a really bad show, and then the net result is pretty much the same, which is that the really good shows I realized weren't that great, or I was like messing up in some other way that I didn't realize. And the really bad ones, it was usually a lot better than I thought. So, and that's kind of, I think, been a healthy thing over the years to listen back a lot and realize, like, there's not that much difference between your really good show and your really bad show, even if it feels like there is.
So you're not beating yourself up too much at the end of the day.
Well, I certainly have a lot in the past, but I think less so now. I think having leading the band versus just sort of, being part of a band or a side man, when I was in those scenarios, I think I beat myself up more.
Gotcha.
But when there's more to worry about, like settling up or selling merch or driving the van, it's almost good, I think, for me. It's like a little less time to obsess over how I played.
Danny Barnes wrote a great piece about what it means to be a sideman versus leading your own band.
That's we've read that out loud in the car multiple times.
Well, lots more questions, but before we have you do another one, what were the first two you actually played for us?
The Perils of Macrame, which was the name of the first tune, which my mom was doing some macrame plant hangers, and it was making her arthritis worse in her fingers. And I just said, "Oh, the perils of macrame." Not the nicest response, but then the phrase just kind of stuck, And so we called that tune "The Perils of Macrame." And then a bit of an intense name for the next one: "The devil hath power to assume a pleasing shape," which is a line from Hamlet. That was the name of the second one. I don't think I've ever actually said the name on the mic. Yeah.
So what are you going to do for us now?
We're going to do a gospel tune that I used to play with my dad. That I learned from the Easter Brothers, entitled "They're Holding Up the Ladder." And this is from our last record that came out a couple years ago. They're holding up the ladder that I'm climbing on. I'm climbing up the ladder and I'm going home at the top of the ladder. Oh, what joy there shall be. And the angels are pulling up this ladder for me. As I climb this gospel ladder, always hitting every sign. I know my Savior's with me and He's teaching me to climb. Every day that I'm climbing, there's a battle for me. At the top of this ladder is another victory. They're holding up the ladder that I'm climbing on. I'm climbing up the ladder and I'm going home at the top of the ladder. Oh, what joy there shall be. And the angels are pulling up this ladder for me. Part of the plan. Can't you hear the angels beckoning? Keep climbing, don't stop. There's a crown of life waiting for you when you reach the top. They're holding up the ladder that I'm climbing on. I'm climbing up the ladder and I'm going home at the top of the ladder. Oh, what joy there shall be. And the angels are holding up this ladder for me. Come on, Ross. you.
Live here at the stage at WTJU, the sounds of the Jacob Jolliff Band doing They're Holding Up the Ladder, a song that Jacob used to do with his dad back in the day, and it's on the Jacob Jolliff Band's album from a couple of years back. They probably have that available and at the merch table along with the new one, Mandolin Mysteries, and anything else you might want to pick up, including from the band members. They probably have their own albums there as well at the merch table. And they'll be at the Front Porch's concert at Potter's Craft Cider here on the 12th of June this evening, and they're going to be carrying on that tour, which you can find all the dates for at jacobjolliff.com. But Sunday it wraps up down there in Floyd, Virginia, at Floyd Country Store. Always a good time there as well. Well, Jacob, as you were telling us the titles, I was reminded, I was chatting with, I always like to ask the musicians, like Joe K. Walsh, I asked, how do you come up with your titles? Because I don't know until the album's about ready to come out, and then I figure it out. Grant Cordy says he keeps a list of titles on his phone that he says, which one is right for this one? How do you come up with your titles?
Well, I do keep a list, but what I've realized, I haven't got much utility out of the list because it's usually just funny phrases that I realize some of them won't make good titles actually, but they're just fun to read to people sometimes, like you would name them after that. But then I think several tunes on the new album, my dad is a literature professor, and there's some very literate folks in my family. I'm the least literate, I'd say. And so I think over Christmas we came up with some titles, just sat down with like some poetry books and just like some other random literature and some phrases, and they just kind of kept on tossing out good phrases and got a couple that way. So and then I do have my fair share of sort of ridiculous titles that I'm like, I'm not sure that was a good idea to call a tune that, but it's like way too late. So it's a mixed bag, I guess, all that to say, yeah.
Well, you can find all these, the titles on his releases, which you can pick up at the merch table or over at Bandcamp as well. He's got the latest albums out on Europa Records, and
That's
you can
right.
pick it up there as well. You all ready for another one?
Yeah. We're going to do the Art Heist Movement 1. Okay. We wrote a slightly longer piece commissioned by Fresh Grass organization, which is a really awesome thing they do, hiring mandolin players such as myself and other instrumentalists to write pieces. And we wrote a concerto of sorts. That sounds kind of fancier than I think it is, which is basically 3 mandolin instrumentals, but we won't play all 3, don't you worry. We're just going to do the first movement, and it's called the Art Heist Suite. Movement 1. One, two, 1, 2, 3, 4. you.
Jacob Jolliff Band, Jacob Jolliff mandolin, George Jackson on fiddle, Ross Martin on guitar, Miles Soniker on the upright, doing movement 1 of the Art Heist Suite. Available now out on Mandolin Mysteries, the second instrumental album from Jacob Jolliff, and you can pick that up this very evening or over at Bandcamp. But if you're in town, head over to Potter's Craft Cider here on the 12th of June and catch their full set, and visit jacobjolliff.com. One and all, thanks so much for stopping by WTJU.
Thank you, Peter. Appreciate it. Thanks for having us. Sweet. Thanks, man. Thanks.